In a small monastery nestled among the rolling green hills of the countryside, there lived a community of Buddhist monks dedicated to walking the path of peace and enlightenment. Among them was a young monk named Ananda, whose kind heart and diligent practice had earned him the respect of his brothers. One crisp morning, as the monks gathered for their daily meditation, a villager burst through the gates in a rage. "Thieves! Defilers!" he cried, face flushed with anger. "One of your corrupted lot has plundered my orchard and crushed my harvest under their feet." The head monk, a wizened elder named Sujata, raised a calming hand. "Peace, good sir. We know nothing of this transgression. Tell us more so that we may investigate fully." The villager's eyes flashed with accusation as he pointed a gnarled finger at Ananda. "It was him. I saw his robes among the tangled branches as he ravaged my crop. My family's entire yield for the season is ruined by his careless greed." A murmur of shock and dismay rippled through the monastery grounds. All eyes turned towards the accused, but Ananda's expression remained serene. He simply bowed to the irate villager. "I am deeply troubled to hear of the injustice you have suffered," he said in a soft but steady voice. "I vow that we will investigate this matter fully and humbly accept the truth, whatever it may be." Despite the heated allegations swirling around him, Ananda's mind remained anchored to the Buddha's teachings on truthfulness and kindness that he had studied so diligently. Sujata nodded with solemn approval at his pupil's response. "So be it," the wizened master intoned. "We shall undertake a thorough inquiry at once." As the weeks passed, interviews were conducted and evidence was gathered, but nothing conclusive could be found to either condemn or absolve Ananda. The young monk steadfastly maintained his innocence, but did so without anger or defensiveness towards his accuser. "I can only affirm what I know to be true in my heart," he said with the same radiant calm. "And I must have compassion for this good villager's pain, for his fear and his fury spring from the anguish of his loss." Ananda's brothers marveled at his unshakable embodiment of the Buddhist virtues in the face of such damning charges. When asked how he could remain so even-keeled despite the gravity of the allegations, he replied, "The seeds of truth and kindness were planted in my heart long ago through diligent practice. Now that harvest bears the fruits that nourish me through this difficulty." Deep lines of consternation creased Sujata's brow as the investigation stalled. As head monk, he was bound by the ancient laws to deliver judgment one way or another. With a heavy heart, he finally summoned Ananda before him. "My pupil, much as it pains me, I must pronounce you guilty based on the evidence, or lack thereof," he said, his voice leaden with regret. "Were it my choice alone, never would I condemn one as virtuous and disciplined as you, but the villager's testimony stands uncontested." Rather than reacting with outrage or defensiveness, Ananda simply regarded his master with a look of profound compassion and understanding. "I accept this judgment dutifully and without rancor," he said in a tone tinged with sadness but free of bitterness. "For I know that you have fulfilled your dutiful role despite the challenge it posed you." Sujata was deeply moved by his pupil's grace, even now when he had every reason to cry injustice. Taking Ananda's hands in his own, he said, "It is you who shame me with your example, not the other way around. Were that I could face such adversity with even a fraction of the peace and acceptance you have embodied." In the days that followed, Ananda humbly accepted his penance of meager rations and long hours of tedious labor, attending to each task with the same unwavering presence of spirit. And though the cloud of accusation still hung over him, he refused to lash out at his accuser. "Why do you remain so relentlessly kind and forgiving towards the one who condemned you?" one of the novice monks asked him one day, baffled by his reaction. Ananda just smiled that transcendent smile, having glimpsed the truth that surpassed judgment and injustice. "Because every being suffers, caught in the snares of their afflictions, until they are able to awaken from the dream of delusion." My accuser lashed out from his own well of anguish and fear. Who am I to return that pain with more pain? My freedom can only be found through the boundless compassion that embraces all temptations to hatred or resentment. Over time, the villager's fury slowly dissolved into remorse as he observed Ananda's unwavering dignity and non-violence through his ordeal. In that light, his own anger began to appear petty and small. One day, overcome with contrition, the villager came before the monastery once more. "Venerable monks," he said, head bowed in shame, "I have grievously wronged your brother Ananda through my haste to lash out over my misfortune. I cannot say for certain now whether he did in fact trespass against my crop, but I can say with conviction that he has met my ignorant condemnation with a profound grace that has awakened my own heart." He dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. "I beg his forgiveness and yours for my disrespect and injustice." As the villager's sobs of remorse echoed through the courtyard, Ananda was the first to step forward and place a comforting hand on the man's trembling shoulder. "Friend, it is I who shares in your suffering, for we have both been burdened by delusion, mine to accept the accusation so readily, and yours to level it so harshly in the grip of anguish. Let us unbind one another through the salve of forgiveness and mutual compassion, for that is the only true path to freedom for us all." In that moment, master and pupil, villager and monk, become united in the radiant stillness that is the true deathless nature. The enlightened peace found only by releasing all accusation, all grievance, all dualistic clinging. Through his shining example, Ananda taught a lesson more profound than any sacred teaching. For it was he who truly embodied the Buddha's wisdom by dealing with hardship through acceptance and open-heartedness, never forfeiting his own virtue or humanity. In this ultimate act of grace and courage, he had become an awakened being deserving of the highest reverence. Moral of the story. The moral of the story is that facing false accusations or unjust treatment with truthfulness, kindness, and a forgiving heart is the highest expression of Buddhist wisdom and virtue. When Ananda was falsely accused of ruining the villager's orchard, he did not react with anger, defensiveness, or hatred toward his accuser. Instead, he responded with patience, honesty about his innocence, and boundless compassion for the suffering that caused the villager to lash out from a place of fear and anguish. Through his shining example, Ananda demonstrated that the true mark of an awakened being is not judged by circumstances, but by one's reaction to adversity. By maintaining his equanimity, acceptance, and loving kindness even when falsely condemned, he was able to dissolve the villager's fury with the light of his virtuous conduct. Ultimately, Ananda's ability to meet injustice with grace and forgiveness allowed the truth to be revealed and created the conditions for healing and mutual understanding to occur between himself and the villager. His story teaches that truthfulness, patience, and an open, compassionate heart are the ultimate protections against delusion, both for ourselves and for those who would seek to wrong us through their own afflictions. In this way, the path to true freedom and enlightenment can be walked not just through personal practice, but through our willingness to extend the Buddhist virtues outward in even the most challenging circumstances. Ananda's integrity in the face of false accusations serves as a poignant reminder that it is how we meet suffering that defines our spiritual progress. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe the channel. We appreciate your support.